Welcome to our demo theater, essential ArcGIS developer tools, tips, and tricks. Hello, I'm John Foster, a developer advocate helping bring you our developer technology simply and affordably. Also with me is Alan Wafarbois, a developer advocate and our lead developer helping to bring you many of the developer topics and code samples that we host on our website. Together we will demonstrate developer-focused ways to use the ArcGIS developer website and cover various tips and tricks helping you build your applications faster and more effectively. You decided you want to include maps and location services in your applications, but where do you start? The ArcGIS developer website is your gateway to all ArcGIS developer technology. You could just start coding, as all of our API documentation and sample code is on this public website, but you will need to sign up for an account if you want to use location services with an API key or authentication. You want to use your own data as a feature service, style custom basemap and vector tile layers and use them in your apps. You want to download and install an SDK or data files such as StreetMap Premium, and to get access to data hosting services and other helpful tools to take advantage of for your development needs. On the documentation page, we show a catalog of developer products available to you. At the top are high-level platform guides that provide conceptual background on our services. They serve as a jumping-off point into the API documentation. All products with a developer component are organized by category. Note, we offer open-source integrations that you can use with our platform services. There are web, mobile, desktop, and server products. You will also find specifications and additional reference material here. The categories offer a search filter where you can search for a particular keyword of the types of products that you're looking for and then peruse the documentation. Let's take a closer look at the Mapping APIs and Location Services Guide. This is platform-wide conceptual documentation covering services available to you, backed up by each API with code samples and tutorials. Each page is organized with easy-to-follow information about the services we offer. You can pick and choose the services you want to use in your apps and use any client API to consume them. Let's take a look at the geocoding service. This demonstrates how we present these location service chapters in the guide. There's a demo app implemented in JavaScript to demonstrate the service. In this case, search for nearby places such as restaurants and hotels and other types of places. And you can get information about each feature on the map. Each demo gives you the complete source code. You can take this code and make it your own. The page explains the various service capabilities with more detailed information about how to use each service and the tutorials that are available. For example, let's take a look at search for an address. You can select the API of your choice to see how you can implement this service. Each tutorial demonstrates how to use the API with easy-to-follow steps. In order to complete the tutorial, you will need an API key. And to get an API key, you will need an account. Signing up is easy and it's free. You only need an email address and you're ready to go. Or you can use one of the social sign-ups. Just complete the form, and you're signed up and ready to go. Once you get to the dashboard, you will need to confirm your email address, and you can set your preferred API. You now have access to the dashboard, where you will have a default API key that is scoped with the most common services you can use in most tutorials. The dashboard is organized to help you use our location services effectively as a developer. You can manage your API keys here and do other important development tasks that we will cover later. Note there are several links and help cards to additional documentation to help you better understand what you can do with API keys and the services. You can create several API keys and scope them to the services you want to manage. To create a new API key, just assign it a title and a description. You can configure the services that have access with this API key. The available services are enabled based on your account type. In my case, I do not have any payment method set, so I am only authorized to use services that have a free tier. If I were to turn on pay-as-you-go, I would only pay for the services I actually use, and more services would be available for me to scope with my API key. To help keep your keys secure, you can restrict the use of your keys from specific referrers. Referrers must match the HTTP referrer header in web apps. They work a little different for server and mobile apps, so refer to the documentation for those use cases. API keys can also include the private data that you own. You can scope an API key to include the individual layers that you've created. But how much do these services actually cost? To understand costs, let's look at the pricing page. Here, you can review all of the available services, their available free tier for usage, and their cost breakdown. For example, if I am building an app that will store geocode results in my own database, I can estimate what that cost would be per month. Each service category may have individual services with different cost parameters. For example, there are many routing endpoints. And cloud storage. There is a different tier for tiles and data saved as features. These free tiers reset every month based on your sign-up date. This is designed to cover the cost of development and testing, but may also cover production use. Now that we understand costs, let's return to the dashboard. Now here's a tip. You can set or change your preferred API. Click the gear icon and update your selection. The dashboard updates based on your preferred API. Now that we know how to get an API key, let's return to the Find Places tutorial and use that API key in an app. The Find Places app for Leaflet looks much the same as we saw earlier with the JavaScript API. Our tutorials are laid out in a set of easy-to-follow steps. We can create all the code and follow the solution, or if we don't feel like typing everything in, the solutions are completely available for all tutorial projects. In this case, I'm going to load the tutorial up in CodePen. Now note the app appears to be working, but the map isn't rendering. This is because I haven't set my API key. Locate the section of the code that requires the API key, and then insert the API key that we copied from the dashboard. Now the map renders, and the services are working. Since I have the complete code here, I can do whatever I want. I can experiment with this project and try different things. I can customize it and make it my own. That's great. So what else can we do? You can bring your own data and use it in an app. To do this, you import your data into a feature service and host it securely on the ArcGIS platform. Go to the Layers tab from your dashboard, and then select Import Data. You can select a file in CSV, GeoJSON, GeoDatabase, and shapefile formats. Once the file is loaded, the import tool asks how to geocode the features in your data. In my particular case, I have latitude and longitude already encoded in my CSV file, but you could also use the geocoder and geocode from addresses. Then it'll look at the columns in your data and try to discern the data types. You can adjust the settings or select the defaults. Now as you import the data, it's going to ask you to set up your feature service and then import the data to create your feature layer. Now note the information you get with your feature layer, such as an item ID, a service URL. These are going to be important settings to use this in your application. So now I can go back and, for example, look at the tutorial for adding layers, and I could use my own feature service that I just imported and follow this tutorial. Let's return to the dashboard and look at the OAuth tab. Use OAuth when API keys do not cover your use case, or you want users to use their own credentials to access the services in your apps, or you want to use a proxy. There is complete documentation in the Security and Authentication chapter to help you understand how these concepts apply on the platform. With OAuth, the client app will prompt a user to log in with their account, or you could use the proxy service and meter service usage to your account. In this application, I've set up a proxy to the traffic service with a rate limit. Note the referrers, authorizing only certain client origins to access my service. And note the proxy URL. This is what I use in my app to proxy the service requests. And here is another tip. The OAuth app provides a temporary token. You can use this temporary token to test out REST calls from the command line tools such as curl, or from applications such as Postman to quickly try the REST endpoints and review the responses for authenticated REST APIs. For runtime developers, you can license your app at the light level for free with your developer account. To do this, you will find the license key in the License and Deploy section of your Platform API guide. You must be logged in to see this. If not, you will be prompted to log in. It also appears alongside the code sample that explains how to add the license to your code. This will license your app at the light level. For more advanced options, please review the documentation. There is a Download tab on your dashboard where you will find SDK downloads and supplemental data files. Here you will find the most recent version and supported prior releases. There are also supplemental data files, such as a sample of the StreetMap Premium data you can use for development in runtime apps. We welcome your feedback, and we want to be responsive to your development needs. Each page includes a feedback widget. When you complete this form, your feedback goes directly to the team responsible for that page. Or you can ask questions in the Esri community on GeoNet, where Esri developers and members of the community help each other out. I am now going to hand off to Alan, who is going to demonstrate developer site workflows and take a deeper dive into development patterns to help you leverage some of the things you can do in your apps.
Hey John, thank you very much. My name is Alan Laframboise, and I want to finish up with a little demo showing the dev site and a bunch of the applications and the dashboard and the guide, I guess, all in action. So let's just jump right in. So first things first, I'm going to go to my dashboard. And in my dashboard, I have some layers already set up. So I've got the Santa Monica Mountains parcel layer. It has a couple 100,000 features in it. And in there, what I want to do is I want to use that layer to generate a vector tile layer, because there are so many features that it would be best if it was rendered in an application as vector tiles. So what I'm going to do is use ArcGIS Online to set up a renderer for it first, and then I'm going to cook the vector tile layers. So I'm just going to go to Content, bypass the map viewer here, and go right to my hosted feature layer. So again, yeah, there's definitely a ton of features in here. So before we cook this though, one thing that you can do is you can use the visualization tab here in ArcGIS Online, and we can set up a renderer for our data. So that's already pre-styled for the client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick use type as the field, and then the smart mapping option will show us a color scheme that it recommends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change residential to orange, so we can identify it easier. Then we'll go for government, we'll change that to yellow, and for irrigated farm, change that to green. So let's say this is the color scheme that we like. What we can do is we can save that with the layer. Now it's part of the feature layer. And now that it's all pre-configured and ready to go, I can go over here. And so what'll happen is you'll actually have another drop down here that says vector tile layer. And I've already published it one time. And so that's already available for us. So we'll go back to our layers, and I'll show you guys what this looks like. And there it is. So this is the exact same color scheme that we looked at before in the feature layer, except now this is, for short, we call it a VTL, a vector tile layer. And you can see that it's much more performant, and this is what we want to use for our application, and it's got all the styling that we want and so forth. So another thing that's interesting before I leave here is the fact that this is a private layer. So it's set to private, so we're going to need an authentication key set up to access it. So we'll come back to that in a moment. So one of the other benefits of using the dashboard and the new developer experience here is that we can get to the developer guide if we want to look for samples and starting points. So I'm just going to jump out to the data hosting chapter, and down in there there's a page on hosted vector tile layers. So if I wanted to, I could go through and I could read and learn more about vector tile layers, but I see this cool little application here, and what I can do for any of the apps in the guide is you can view the code, the source code in CodePen. So I'm just going to click on this guy, and that's going to open up our application, and right away we're being prompted for an API key or some type of credentials. So what I can do is, let me just go back here to the dashboard, open that in the tab so I have both these guys available. And I'm going to go back to my API keys. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new API key. I'm going to call this private data. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a content item to this key, and it's going to be the VTL, the vector tile layer that I just created. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to add the item. So now this key is and will authenticate access to this vector tile layer, and everything is still private. So here is the key, and I'll grab that right now, go back to the app, and I'm going to plug this in here to the JavaScript API, Esri config API key parameter, and we're going to get part of the way there. So what we need to do is we need to reference our particular layer. So let's go back here, and here is our vector tile layer, and I can just grab the URL endpoint and we update this guy. And let it refresh. And there it is. So as you can see, our color scheme is being applied automatically, and the JavaScript API does that for us. So for every vector tile layer that's served up as a hosted vector tile layer, it will look for the JSON associated with the layer to apply the styling, and the styling is all being applied on the client. So we get the super fast rendering of many features, and this is kind of what we wanted. Okay, so that was kind of like part one, just styling some data and then accessing it. Another thing we can do is I'm just going to go back to the developer guide. So I'm in the developer guide again in the data chapter. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more, and let's say I'm interested in developing an application using a different language, different API. You'll see that in the examples, we have this little code switcher here, and we can switch to any of the languages that we have supported in the list. So let's just change to Mapbox GLGS, and here's the code. I can grab the code if I already have an application, work with that, or I can go to the tutorial. So again, I can go through the tutorial, and I could step by step just kind of go through and create this application from scratch and learn about it, or again, I can just steal the code pen and use this as a starting point. So let's go ahead and build this application out. So right, so it's the same deal as before. We need an API key. So I'm going to grab the API key from the other application, plug that in. Then next, let's see, yeah, it's going to render that guy, but we have to replace this URL endpoint to our URL endpoint. So once again, I'm going to go down here to our dashboard, and I'm going to grab the tile URL, which has the reference to the PFBs that we need. So I'm just going to place that, and that did update, so I know for sure this is accessing my data, not the data for the site. And okay, so there's an issue now. So the other data set was public, so you could access it with any API key. And now this is scoped, so what we need to do is we need to basically make an authenticated request to our server. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to add a token parameter on here, and we're just going to change our expression a little bit so that all of the requests to the tile server are authenticated. And now we're passing that API key in with each request, and as you can see, it's now referencing our data. So if you're wondering why it's blue, it's because we're just styling it here on the client with whatever was in this code before. But I want to show you how it's pretty easy to use the developer dashboard to grab the styling information for the vector tile layer. So as you know, this one's orange. So if I click on style in our properties here, then I have the styling layout, and this is the JSON format that a client application can use to style vector tiles on the fly. So I'm going to grab this guy from top to bottom. Let's go through here and grab that guy. And then what I'm going to do is go back to my application, and I'm going to use this. So I'm going to create a const. This is my layers, and this is basically just a big old array. And something that some of you might be interested in is that when we set the renderer up earlier and we created the vector tile layer out of the feature layer, then the renderer was applied and basically translated. So the renderer code was translated to the Mapbox vector tile specification styling code. So that's what we have here in JSON format. So it's really neat. It's all done for us, and we use our dashboard to get a hold of that. Now what we need to do is add like all these different layers. Like there's one layer for residential, and there's another layer for government and all the other classifications that we set up earlier. So what I'm going to do now is, let's see here, I can do something like layers. So for each layer, what we're going to do is, so I just need to clean this up a little bit. There we go. Okay, what we want to do is we want to go to the map, and we're going to add a layer, and we're going to add each layer. So essentially this is going to iterate through our layers construct, and it's going to apply all the styling for all the layers. And basically it's applying our renderer on the fly. So now we have the hosted vector tile layer with the styles that were created in ArcGIS Online and saved. And we retrieved the JSON, and then now the JSON is controlling the styling on the client. So pretty neat example showing how easy it is to basically use the tools within your dashboard and some of the other tools in ArcGIS Online to generate new data types, and in this case a different layer, and apply and use that layer in your application. And in this case we also showed showing the secure and private way to access data using API keys, which is essential. So I think that's about it, and I want to thank you guys a lot for joining us today. I want to thank John for the presentation earlier, and of course we're open to any questions that you guys have, and otherwise just provide your feedback for the session in the session survey link that they have below. So I look forward to seeing you guys in the QA session, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.